Hello. Welcome to my channel. Today, we will be going over the matches in the knockout round, and who I think is going to win. Let's get started. We'll start with the Eastern region. Shanghai Dragons versus Philadelphia Fusion. This is going to be another incredible game. These are probably the two best teams in the Eastern region. Yes, I think Shanghai is better than Chengdu. But while Shanghai is an incredible team, Philadelphia is an unstoppable force. They've handily won every single match, even ending Chengdu's hot streak. Looking at the rosters, Philadelphia outclasses them in basically every way, despite Shanghai's extremely solid roster. I'm giving this 3-1 to the Philadelphia Fusion. Seoul versus Chengdu. I have not been impressed whatsoever with Seoul. They've only beaten washed up, borderline bad teams. They're sheep in a wolf's den right now. Chengdu is simply the better team all around. I give this 3-0 to the Chengdu Hunters. Now, on to the West. Toronto versus Florida. This is going to be a really good match. I feel that both teams are at a similar skill level, and that almost anything can happen. However, I'm going to give this one to Florida. While Toronto arguably has the better tank lane, Florida bests Toronto in their damage and supports. Logix is very good, but Yaki has him beat at nearly every hero in my opinion. I'm going to call this a 3-2 thriller with the boys in pink coming out on top. Dallas versus San Francisco. I'm going to say it. Dallas is overrated. They are definitely a very strong team, but their only real accomplishment is beating the Los Angeles Gladiators, who are fairly washed up. Anyways, you could argue that Dallas and Shock put up similar scores against Houston, so the match should be close, but honestly, Shock borderline through the early game. Had they not run questionable roster choices against Houston, I've no doubt they would have won. Dallas simply cannot stand up to the powerhouse the San Francisco Shock is. San Francisco Shock win this 3-0. This pits Florida against Washington and San Francisco against Houston. Florida versus Washington. What do you want me to say? Florida is simply outclassed here in virtually every way. The DPS line and tank line is far superior in Washington. Decay alone is probably enough to overwhelm Florida's DPS. You could say the supports on Florida are better, but Florida is simply outclassed. I give this to Washington in a 3-1 victory. Then we have the rematch of the century. San Francisco versus Houston. This will be another close one, but as I've said before, I think San Francisco should have won in their first match, and I think they'll win here. San Francisco will come out of the gate swinging and overwhelm Houston. Houston aren't slouches, and will make it a good match, but I give San Francisco the victory 3-2. My final prediction is that the Philadelphia Fusion, Chengdu Hunters, San Francisco Shock and the Washington Justice will move on to the main melee.